and see how you's all doing. I was going to do a live outside. I don't know if you can hear it, but over the back of the property, there's a what do you call it? Like a park, and the local council have just shown up to do the weed whacking and the mowing the lawns and that, and so I set it all up outside, and then of course the weed whackers started up, and it's pretty noisy out there, which is a shame because I really wanted to go out and hang out with the trees and that with you guys, but not this time around it seems. So, but anyway, thank you so much for signing in and joining me here in the house this time. Um, just wanted to jump on and just see who's around and what everyone's up to. And I do have something I want to talk about as well, but I'll get into that once we'll see a couple more people come in, if there is anyone around. I'm guessing it's for most of my audience who are in the northern part of the United States. Sorry, the northern part of North America. That's what I was trying to say. It's probably your Sunday afternoon, I'm guessing. And so I thought, well, this wouldn't probably be a bad time to do it, unless you're out enjoying your Sunday afternoon with your friends and your family, going out and walking the dogs and enjoying nature, or maybe going out for a cup of tea, well, you guys don't really drink tea over there, do you? Which is funny, I'm having a coffee. But it's not too bad, actually. I've stepped away from having black coffee. I have that much more sparingly now. I must admit I do enjoy it more. It's got a kind of a kick to it that I don't really get from having milk-based coffees. I have, like oat milk. And I've got to say, gee whiz, going out for a milk-based coffee nowadays, especially a plant milk-based coffee, it's like $5 here in New Zealand, roughly, to get an Americano, which is basically like a big black coffee in a cup. And then it's like another $1.50 or $2 or sometimes $2.50 to get to get some plant milk put in, and it's quite a strange type of economics, really. We have another weird phenomena here in New Zealand. I'm guessing you guys have probably got it too, and it sort of revolves around. I don't drink Coca-Cola, but back in the day. So anyway, if you go to a local supermarket, I don't know what the prices are, but the same sort of economics applies, and that is you can buy like a 1.5 liter bottle of Coke or something like this for like $2 or $3, maybe it's a bit more now, but the same product in a little 300 ml can be $5 or $6, and so you're getting the same product in a smaller quantity for more money. It's obviously a convenience thing in that, but yeah, it's funny because it happens here with the putting the plant milk in the coffees too. Like. But yeah, I got to say, I am enjoying having a break from black coffee. The acid in black coffee is pretty serious, and for those of you who are on the channel as practices, you know that certain sort of the intake of certain compounds and substances and lifestyle choices. I'll just use coffee as the example. These things can be you know quite distracting. If you've had a couple of black coffees, that acid is pretty real. It's right there, and it can be quite distracting. And I want to say too that you know uh, coffee has its benefits, as well, but it's like anything, you know when you're actually having a coffee to sort of like, just because you feel like one, and it's probably not gonna, it's not the right thing to do. Coffee's a funny one, eh? Like, it's funny even listening to some of the teachers talk about tobacco as well and cigarettes. I used to be a smoker years ago. I don't look back, to be honest. I don't. One thing I do miss about being a smoker, I think, is especially being a musician. All the cool people would be outside having cigarettes, and yeah, it gave you sort of a reason to go outside, and so that was quite nice. But yeah, listening to how nicotine-based products, cigarettes, and that can help you with your concentration. Obviously, there's a lot of other problems with that, but I think too that when it comes to imbibing some kind of compound, excuse me, or substance, whether it's coffee, cigarettes, the benefits from, say, something like even cannabis, there's ways to engage these things in a way that are not so, where you can take the benefits from them without the unhelpful side sort of effects, if you will, because some of them, it's, if we just talk very candidly about things like, say, cannabis and coffee, or even food choices, they have a residual sort of hangover effect to them, which can be very unhelpful. And your relationship to those items as well. You know, if you need the thing, don't get me wrong. Some of these are quite valid medicines in their own right, but there's also this thing of like, can I reproduce or gain the benefit through some other kind of more intrinsically natural activity rather than reaching for an external stimulus? And sometimes it's helpful for a little while to engage in these things, but they can become new masters, and we don't want that. As hermeticists and practices of essentially internal sovereignty and monarchy, we're becoming our sort of our own ruler, if you will. We're not allowing our internals, our the parts of ourselves that are running amok, these lesser aspects, to rise up and sort of steer the ship. But there's ways to get the value from some of these compounds without the unhelpful aspect of it. And there's a lot of sort of, for example, if we talk, say, something like cannabis, it's a hot word, and it's for so many reasons, because as soon as you say something like that word, cannabis, marijuana, or anything like that, instantly comes to mind as probably a very negative worldview for a lot of people. But on the flip side, there's lots of people having their health issues like disappear because they're using a sort of a natural plant extract. They're not smoking it and having the psychoactive effect, which has a bunch of other effects, but they're able to sort of harvest the value from these things. And it's the same with with coffee. Is sometimes coffee is the best thing ever, and sometimes it's just quite unhelpful. So yeah, finding your relationship with, I guess, your medicine cabinet or your herb garden, or we live in times that are very challenging, and we also have if you live in a built-up metropolitan or urban area, there is, oh, okay, they've stopped doing the lawn mowing. I'm just going to open the door a little bit. It's getting a bit warm in here. Hang on. Thank you. Cool. So, and I tell you what, if they don't start up again in the next sort of 2 to 3 minutes, I'll take us outside. Okay. Well, the sun's coming out now. But yeah, so where was I going with this? We were talking about compounds and things that can help. Oh, yes. So we are sort of inundated with environmental toxicity. Jesus loves you. Why, thank you. Well, I'd like to think so. I've got this wonderful, it's called the New English Bible. It's a version of the New Testament. And as a hermeticist, someone who seeks to understand the ways of masters who have come before us, I've actually found a lot of value in this, and seeing how Jesus walked, how he talked. I came across an interesting passage. Actually, I'm wandering off topic here. Thank you so much, Deanna. Yeah, and so seeking to understand the miracles of Jesus through the lens of sort of like someone who is a hermetic practicer, a hermetic kabbalist, and seeing, like I said, how the various masters walked. It's a very valuable book, you know. Um, so yeah, but anyway, where I was going, where I was going before. Thank you, Deanna. You know, was this? There's a we are completely inundated with a variety of environmental toxins from just there's so many of them. You know, you can list out, all the different sort of trajectories and incoming sorts of angles of toxicity. Um, bless you, sister. And there's so much going on. And so what we have is we have largely, as sort of organic beings, we really have the deck stacked against us. We tend to only acknowledge things that we can see, and that is a crucial point. And like if we could see all the radiation, for example, all the electromagnetic sort of waves and things like that, we would probably have a different relationship to it. It's not right in front of our faces. If we turned the Wi-Fi router off and suddenly you didn't see it, right? Some people are hypersensitive to it. I'm sensitive to it more often than I will admit, to be honest. But if you could see it, you would have a different view of it. If you were not feeling well and then you just turned the Wi-Fi router off and then you just felt better, you'd be like, huh, what's going on here? You know, if you could see, for yourself, what goes into the municipal water supply. So if you want to do a little experiment, it's not an easy one because you need to basically make a distiller. We've got one that we got for water distillation. It can be used for all sorts of things. Very expensive to run, my gosh, and you got to leave it overnight. And basically it just strips, it distills the water, and then you see what's left afterwards. So it boils the water, and then it catches the steam, and then it runs down. And the first time I did this and looked in the bottom, there was this white powdery slop. And we know, that there's things like fluoride and, these other, highly questionable sorts of additives. And so that's the water, Then we've got the air, you know. I used to work in automotive, and there are, things being ejected by vehicles. It doesn't matter whether they're EV or petrol or diesel, whatever. There's these multiples of these airborne toxins that, we don't, if you go to some countries where they have the haze, big industrial places and that, it's quite visible, you know. I live by the sea. We're on a strip of land. The wind blows a lot of it away, but if you go into the city, there is a bit of a haze there. But how does that affect us? And sometimes these things are cumulative and you don't really notice them. It's just this tiny little bit at a time, and you adjust to it. The organism, the physical organism, has the ability to sort of, make adjustments to cope as best it can. But there's still this, and especially if you're aware of it as well. This is why sometimes, ignorance is bliss. If you're aware of all of these sort of environmental toxins, then there's an unconscious stress that's running underneath. You're sort of like, well, I can't do much about it, so I guess I have to deal with it, and if you can make peace with that, that's great. But otherwise you're sort of grinning and bearing it, and there's a contraction and a tension there that you're carrying with you. Essentially, it's another thing for your backpack of burdens, if you will. And then of course we've got things like food as well. And yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but as someone who likes to puts a good effort into monitoring things that I ingest, I have to say that the if you're reading labels on food products, it can be quite alarming, especially if you take the research to the next level. You know, I read all the labels before I put stuff in my trolley, and if I'm putting something in there that I know is funky, I know full and well what I'm going to be putting myself through, and it's not always pretty the next day, I've got to say, or even that later on. But every so often, I put a little bit of poison in the system so that the body can operate. But yeah, if I do too much of it, oof, it's unhelpful, you know. So yeah, so being conscious of these things, these toxins, and so this comes back around to what I was saying before. Cheers. Is that a lot of the compounds and things that people work with, and I'm putting it like that. Um, I'm not just going to sort of casually say that we do. You know, when you are using and intentionally choosing words like I am consciously engaging with this food item. I am fully aware. I am fully conscious that I'm in an environment that is not that friendly for it's not that life affirming for humans or organics. So being fully aware of that. Oh, beautiful. Uh, you can choose. You're consciously doing it, and you can become aware of the effects. Because it's easy. What I found is, especially, I really noticed this when I gave up smoking cigarettes back in the day. Actually, everyone at work was giving up smoking. It was great. It's the best way to do it. If you're a smoker and you want to give up, and you've got friends or people you work with who are kind of open to the idea too, it will be so much easier. Because especially if you're at work all day with these peeps, and you're just like, all right, it's good to get up away from the computer desk, and that's one of the weird bonuses of being a smoker is you might get up every half hour or hour, depending on your boss, and yourself and your internal boss, and you'll go out and you'll have some time away from the computer, and that's good. Uh, but if everyone in your little circle is like, all right, let's do this, let's move on from the cigarette smoking nonsense because we know it's bad for us and it's really expensive and we smell bad and it's making me tired, or it's this kind of we just know it's not that great. I mean, if you look at what they put in those things, oh my gosh. Although I will say, a friend of mine said, well, he smokes this organic tobacco. I think it's called, he's from the US. I think it's called American Spirit or something like this. And it's this kind of, it's probably not actually that bad. It's you're still inhaling a carcinogen because it's a combusted product. It's, but it's not going to have a lot of the extra stuff in it. So, anyway, so here we are. We're in this environment. We might be in the middle of a suburban built-up area. We've got all these stresses that people 100 years ago didn't have. They had different stresses, which we may have struggled. If we were transported back in time, we probably would struggle with them. Just like in today's society, many people would be like, "This is incredible. Everything's so convenient and technology so wonderful, and it's great." There are a whole new bunch of stresses in modern society, and so you kind of pick your poisons, if you will. But we haven't got it too bad now because we can inform ourselves. The internet, the double-edged sword of the internet, allows us to become more aware of what's going on in the world, how the world works, and of course we have to discern this because not everything's all that reliable, and so we have to sort of build that discernment muscle. But yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because modern stressors and the decline and the decay of the physical organ and the subtle bodies as a result, or our awareness of the subtle bodies and how these things happen. Sometimes things like people will find that they've been pushing a boulder up a hill, if I use that one, and they're not getting anywhere. And They found that a certain substance compound, cigarettes, nicotine, so maybe some sort of cannabis product or a natural herbal remedy or something like this, has helped them to overcome the thing. And then, of course, once they overcome it, then it's like, okay, well, can I do it without the thing, sort of thing. And one of the reasons might be is that, like I said, all of these modern toxins that are just everywhere, water, air, food, you know, going out into the main street, even, all of these things they're all cranking up the pressure on your ability to sort of live your best life. And so, there's ways of discovering, value, but then it's like, okay, well, these things can be, like I said, a double-edged sword, and they do need to be reviewed from time to time because, well, regularly, really, because if we find that we have to constantly lean on some kind of crutch, then, that training wheel becomes, highly embedded within us. And yeah, it's a tricky one because, some people have lived a full life already and have, maybe disadvantaged themselves through some kind of repeated use of a substance. Maybe it was, some kind of drug, or it was, and I include alcohol under that as well, that's just me personally. But, towards, they might be in their sort of like 30s, 40s, or 50s and had a hard life. Maybe they used to go out clubbing all the time and they sort of mucked up their internal chemistry by, using too many sort of lab-made products or some kind of natural compound that was maybe, they didn't maybe have the biological architecture or infrastructure to manage that. Because all of these things, the body's a pretty amazing thing, right? The stories of the complete remissions from chronic and acute health issues that modern medicine haven't found a response for, or a like a miracle, what you might call a miracle response for. But then, like, someone will get on the healing table, or they'll go out into nature and they'll find or a local herbal healer will give them something, and then it sorts their issues out. Yeah, sorry, I'm just being conscious of the time. So, anyways, thank you so much for joining me, everybody. I did have something else I wanted to talk about too, which was more to do with the sort of the role of, I guess it might be like, what do we, those of us who are practitioners, and maybe those of us who are service providers as well, whether it be for health and wellness, whether we might be like, for myself, sometimes, I will be teaching people meditation or qigong or, Reiki, providing services for people to sort of get still, find clarity, have a break, a respite from their current situation, because sometimes that window is all that they need to get a deep sense of how to move forward, because they're constantly in the soup that prevents them from being crystal clear on what it is that they need to attend to move through this current situation. And so I wanted to talk about this idea of, like, being someone who is essentially in the community, whether it's an online, local, or regional, or whatever, someone who is encouraging upliftment, betterment, good practices, sharing personal experience for the benefit of others, reporting back on interesting things to help keep people inspired and encouraged and curious with life. I think that's a common ailment for the modern age. Oh, coffee's getting cool. Is that with dopamine, cheap dopamine, and the effects of social media and scrolling. Come on, give me a hit, give me a hit, give me a hit, give me a hit. Oh, there it is. And then it's gone. Quick, next thing. You're constantly like, where's the next, there's lots of other ways. There's ways to get more valuable dopamine hits, if you will. And how can we, I guess, you know, ensure that we're engaged in those ourselves, so that we're genuinely and sincerely passing on the value of that. How that is, how we can convey that to others. Okay, so for an example, uh, you know, vital breathing. If you go out into the woods, if you go out to the woods today, and you do some pore breathing, and you do that for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is pretty good usually, and just focus, on the pore breathing. So you're breathing through the pores. You're not just breathing through the nose and through the mouth. You're breathing in and out through the pores. You're breathing in and out through the feet, through the hands. You're connecting all the body, and you do this. You're not necessarily even building the ball or touching the energy. You're just pore breathing. You're just breathing in the environment. You know, you do that for 10 minutes, and then you come back out into the world, and you're noticeably different. You know, generally, I've found, I'd like to say 100% of the time, I come out better off. And then, of course, let's talk about it. Let's share it with other people, because we know people. We've got people in our lives who are, who are not doing that well, and we'd like to see them do better. And how can we do that in a sort of like a non-invasive way, where we're not sort of, you know, impinging upon their free will, so to speak. We're not being pushy in that. I mean, it's a little different if you're a parent, if you've got someone in your care. But what this kind of comes back around to me as is that there is a role in society for this kind of genuinely enthusiastic but kind of measured, put it like this: if you were playing a game like SimCity or The Sims or something where you're caring for a community or a village, whether it's a virtual sense, a board game, or you're looking after a group of people because you're a scout leader or you're running a meditation group. I've talked about this many times on the channel. I talked about it with Mark Rasmus recently, and Mark Stavish, which will be coming out, I think, in a couple of weeks' time, the interview with Mark Stavish. It's on my Substack. Thank you for everyone who signed up to my Substack. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Uh, how do you care for those who are in your care? What is the, what can you do without, you know that there's certain personality traits that can be unhelpful. And so you're conscious of how you present yourself. Okay, I'm not going to go into my opinioned perspectives on this, because this is more about just stimulating this conversation about how do we set up our tight circle, our crew. How do we help set them up for the win? They've come to us. They're like, hey, I love what you're on about, and I want to know more, and I want to learn. It's like, cool. Well, somebody says that to you, and you become a teacher for them of some sort, or a confidant or that. Then you sort of enter into, I guess, an unwritten kind of agreement that you're going to present them with things that are going to be beneficial to them. And this is great because it helps you lift your own game. And, when I became a guitar teacher, it certainly made me lift my game, because I had all these very impressionable children around me. And I was like, oh, man, I want to be a better person, because I can see where my life went with certain decisions. And, these kids are so impressionable. Like I was teaching kids as young as 6 and 7, and I would see the backgrounds that they came from. I taught literally over 1,000, easy. I wouldn't say thousands, but easy 1,000 kids in my time as a guitar teacher, and older people too. But where I noticed a lot of where I was able to observe patterns mostly was because I was teaching a lot of young kids in groups, and you get to know them and you get to know their families, because you talk to mum one week, you talk to dad next week. In some cases that happened a lot more than people would probably realize. The amount of broken families out there, or families who are, mum and dad are broken up, and kid goes to mum one week and then goes to dad next week, and the kid's getting knocked around, and mum says this and dad says that, and the kids are confused. I tell you what, the amount of parents having adult conversations with their kids, and the kids are like, I don't know how to process this. Why is my mummy being so mean to my daddy, and vice versa? So, I learned how to walk a pretty good line as a neutral figure. I was there for the kid and essentially for the family too. But I mean, I would have to deal with all sorts of situations, and it was emotionally full on, man. You know, dealing with that many people that often, like you probably heard me talk about it, but at one point I was teaching close to 180 people a week. 180 students. I think my top was about 176. I pulled it down to about 120, 130, and that was a good little amount, because it's full on, when you have, especially if you're teaching, hanging out with people one to one, people will, if they're in a group, some people will open up more, and then in a one to one they'll open up more. It just depends on the person and the situation and the society and the culture and all these types of things. But when somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I'd really like your help," and maybe it is more so of a personal nature, then you go, "Okay, all right. Well, this person is basically just kind of making themselves vulnerable for me to help them, and what's the best way to play this? Because I want to help this person out, presumably." So yeah, anyway, back to what I'm saying. This idea that there is a role in society for us, for people to consider, which is this sort of. I've thought about a bunch of names, because we're generally, most people who are watching this will be some kind of practitioner of some form, whether it's a religious form, or a more metaphysical, less religious, more magic, or whatever. We're having experiences, and we're taking value from that. We're seeking to find the value in them, even if they're really interesting and engaging in that. You can't help but not be changed by these things slightly, at least. As you explore, new things unfold, and there's gems to share, with other people. Whether you're actively trying to go out there and sort of be of service, even if you just talk to people. People want to know, "Hey, bro, how's them spiritual adventures going?" You're like, "Bro, man, I was da 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 da." People are going to be like, "Oh, inspired." Not everyone's going to activate themselves to go and want to practice, but they're going to be like, "Oh, wow, like there's a, like I trust this guy," or like I tend to believe, or I take on that there's a sincerity and an actual thing going on here, and so sharing these experiences with other people, when we deem it to be appropriate, because there's that whole thing about like oversharing and inappropriate sharing. That's why we have the pillar of silence, so we don't diminish our own sort of adventure and experience, and also we don't necessarily want to contaminate other people's experiences as well. We want them to encourage people to, bro, you can figure it out for yourself if you want. So, but yeah, I mean, look, I'm not talking about influencers and gurus, the modern sort of current popular understandings of those words. They're very loaded words. It's more like I've got a lot of creative people in my life, very creative, very, very capably creative, actually, and it's inspiring for me, and where I'm not creative, I sort of bring other things to the table for, especially if it's an area that I'm just not a specialist, or I'm not that kind of knowledgeable about. But coffee's never as good when it's warm, eh? It's got to be hot, man. Um, so I've been thinking about all these kinds of words, like one thing that we have to do nowadays is we have to be a little bit more agile with our vocabulary, because all it takes is one headline, and then a word's no good no more. We can't use it, or a symbol's no good no more, or like the populace is quite easily swayed in their understanding of what a thing represents. It's pretty easy to you can like it's like keeping up with trends and things is a man. I tell you, you know, it's like you go and talk to like an 8 or a 10-year old, and they're going to use language you've never heard. They're going to tell you about bands or music you've never heard of. They're going to tell you about cool things going on or tech, or you'd be like, what? And keeping on top of all that stuff is like you know it's near impossible unless you're sort of participating in the pop culture that's appropriate for that sort of demographic, or that what's going on at the moment. And there's value in that. I had to do that as a guitar teacher because I was dealing with young kids, and so I had to I guess try and relate to them, especially when they first came in, and they're like, I mean, who's this guy? And they'd see me play and be like, oh, this guy's cool. But I earned a lot more street cred with them if I was playing a song that their mum and dad liked to play and sing along to. They'd be like, oh, can you teach me that? Because they wanted to make mum and dad proud. But I'd talk about things like video games and movies and shows and things like that. So there was like a common sort of language bond there. Building up these rapport bridges, if you will. And I've often thought about this as you're sort of like, what is the role of someone who genuinely wants to be a potent agent of positive change in the world, and leveraging the online social platforms to as a delivery system for that. Because my gosh, there is certainly you know a lot that is counter to that, and so I don't know. I just feel this natural inclination towards exploring ways of sharing stuff that I think to be beneficial, especially as my time working with kids. I see how you know I would often think, are we better to focus on the kids or on the parents? Are the parents a lost? Are the adults a lost cause? Are the kids now? They'll get sorted out. It's best to work on the parents because the parents can figure out how to bring the kids up better and all this sort of thing. It's like, well, I don't know. I guess you can pick a point of focus, or you can just go. You know what? There's a thing that I'm really interested in, and I think it's valuable and it's beneficial, and it could make a lot of positive change in the world. And so I'm just going to drill down on that, and whoever the audience ends up being, that's who it ends up being. And you infuse your sincerity and your understandings and your desire to help improve the situation across the board into that message. And it's I reflect a lot on my time working with kids, and that, and seeing how when I would alter my personal approach to whatever it was that I was teaching, how that would influence you know the outcome, or what kind of outcomes that would eventuate in. And you know this is this kind of psychology of communication, interpersonal communication, connecting with other people, and essentially kind of like greasing up a conversation, you know, so that it's, because you can have, three people say exactly the same, line for line, words, paragraph, sentences to a person. And, two of those people, even though they're repeating verbatim the same thing as the other two people, the person on the receiving end is just going to be like, no, for whatever reason. It's going to have a lot to do with the presentation style, and also, the inflection of your tone, and blah, blah, blah. But they're also going to have a preference for how they receive that information and who provides it. Like dads would often, dads who were guitar players would bring their kids to me, and I'd say, and they'd play guitar, and the dad would show me, and I'd be like, "Wow, bro, you got some skills, man." I said, "Why you don't know how to teach him? You don't want to teach him?" He's like, "Oh," I says, "Look, he's my boy." He says he doesn't really listen to me like that. We just want to hang out and have fun. I don't want to be a teacher because then I'll have expectations in that area, and it kind of takes the fun out of it. That's why. And also, you know, so they had good reasons, and so they would bring the kids to me, to learn, and you know, we would find ways of help getting the kids to interact with mum and dad at home on their instrument. There's ways of doing that, and some of those ways are, there's ways that you can learn by showing the thing you learn to other people. That really helps to sort of um, load it in, if you will. So, yeah, but once again, back around to it, you know, this idea of the village shaman, Keepright, the someone who's sort of, they understand their job to be a sense of like, it doesn't mean to be a full-time job. You may have the ear of a lot of influential people. You may be a type of a maven. If you haven't heard of that word, look that one up. Maven, Maven. Um, Essentially, you know, you've got influence and persuasiveness, and you're conscious that when you say things to certain people, they're gonna probably run with it, and you go, okay, well, for whatever reason, I've got this connection with certain people, and I can see how it could be misused, but I can also see how it would be a wonderful thing. Oh, there we go. I think let's go outside, eh? See if I can get this to rock outside without. Ooh. There we go. Oh, that's nice. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Yeah, so you know, finding ways to help the situation out on the planet here without sort of what would you call transgressing certain laws of being conscious of people's right to live their own lives. But being, like I said, recognizing there is value in having influence and persuasive capability, because there's a lot of individuals operating out there that are fully aware of what I'm talking about and using it for their own gain at the expense of other people. And this is, and they may be aware of the lawfulness behind it or not. But how do we walk? What do we choose? And how can we leverage this influence to, because when people around me are doing well, I feel so much better. When people around me are doing well, they're creative, they've got good things going on in their lives, they're hanging out with good people, they're fit and well and healthy, making choices that are leading them to bigger, better opportunities. Man, that's the best. I love seeing my friends and family do well. I'm sure they enjoy seeing me do well. I'm sure you probably feel the same as well. So, just something to have a chew on anyway. Like as a practitioner, who's dealing in, I guess you might call it sort of, the universal laws, and you're discovering that as you move through your practice, that there are certain potencies becoming available that you can, use in one form or another. You can use these for the benefit of those around you, and it's fun, to watch how the practices can be turned into something that's valuable to the collective. You know, the immediate value to yourself is discoverable, but you know, seeing how, oh, what's going on here? Let's see if I can figure this out. Seeing how, you know, that's transferable and conveyable to others. There's such a treasure in that. So yeah, but thank you everyone for hanging out today. What's the time? Oh, yeah, it's about 45 in. I just want to say that the birds are a bit quiet today. You can hear a few off in the distance there. Beautiful. So lucky to be living in a like, you know, I'm living in a pretty built up area, but I'm lucky to have a section of bush down here that I can retreat into. It's lovely for training and meditation and these types of things. So yeah. Alrighty guys, have yourselves a beautiful day. I am going to sign off for the moment. I appreciate you all. If you want to, if you haven't already and you haven't had a look, go and check out philrice.substack.com. I'll put a thing at some point underneath there. And, you know, there's a few things up there that you won't find anywhere else. Some articles. And I think there might be some videos too, but mostly they're articles, written articles. But there's no ads. Isn't that cool? No ads. You can listen with your phone screen off. You don't have to buy a YouTube subscription. That's all good, eh? Awesome. Alright guys, have a beautiful day. I appreciate you all. And we'll see you on the next video, eh? Cheers.